the far northeast of India, just a few kilometres from the border with Bhutan, lies the Bandapani tea garden village. In this remote region, most residents depend on tea production for their livelihoods. Many rarely leave the village. Among them is tea picker Pratima Around. She can't read or write. And she's never been online.
नेट मान तो चलाएं नहीं जानूं काम कर थी बजे से वो सब करें नहीं सका था अब तानी मने पढ़ा लिखा रहा तो और अथी होता
Pratima is not alone in being in the dark when it comes to the internet. Many residents in Bandapani don't have smartphones. And for those who do, getting a reliable signal can be difficult because of limited connectivity in the village. This is a problem that is widespread in India, where most of the population lives in rural areas. A study by the Internet and Mobile Association of India reveals that as of 2023, 45% of the population still didn't access the internet. That's 665 million people. Almost a quarter of people surveyed who weren't online said it was because it was too difficult to use the internet, while 17% said they couldn't afford it. The Digital Empowerment Foundation, or DEF, is one NGO that is trying to connect the unconnected. For more than 2 decades, it's brought wireless internet to remote and marginalised communities and helped people to access the web. In some rural places, this is done through a network of inexpensive wireless infrastructure. In Bandapani, to get a clear line of sight, DEF put up a bamboo tower with a broadband device at the top. Simple but effective. The foundation also set up a small digital centre, equipped with a laptop, printer and scanner, a rare sight in this remote area, and one of more than 2,000 across the country. In an age of rapid digitisation, DEF sees its work as a way of tackling poverty.
Most of the access to necessities, access to rights, access to entitlement, access to bank account, access to my doctor, or access to health related information is all now almost can only be done through digital. So almost everything that we need on a daily life, even for the poorest of the poor, has started being framed or legislated or enacted to be part of the digital ecosystem. But alas, we don't have digital infrastructure.
Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Digital India initiative, even securing government benefits and services, including subsidies, is primarily done online. But what about the millions of Indians who don't have the internet?
मैं 8:30 में यहाँ पे आ जाती हूँ 8:30 में आने के बाद मैं सेंटर को ओपन करती हूँ
In 2016, DEF started its Suchnapreneur program to fill the gap.
करने के बाद जो बेनिफिशियरीज आते हैं उनका प्रॉब्लम्स को जानती हूँ जैसे कि कुछ डॉक्यूमेंट्स वगैरह रॉन्ग है या नहीं ये सब जान के उसके बाद उसका सब कुछ कर देती हूँ डिजिटल लिटरेसी क्लासेस भी होता है जैसे कि यहाँ पे इंटरनेट वगैरह सब कुछ हम लोग प्रोवाइड करते हैं
24-year-old Priyanka Paswan in Bandapani is one such Suchnapreneur, a word which combines the Hindi for information with the English entrepreneur. Mostly women Suchnapreneurs are appointed from within their communities and trained by DEF in IT skills. The idea is for them to be a one-stop digital resource for government schemes and benefits. Many remote areas of India, like this village, are home to tribal and marginalised communities who are already economically disadvantaged. Experts say that lack of internet access makes it harder for them to break the cycle of poverty. It was thanks to Priyanka that Pratima Around was able to apply for the digital documents to get government handouts for women from tribal communities, an often complicated process that many find impossible to navigate on their own. With that, Pratima now receives about $12 every month, the equivalent of 4 days' wages. Similarly, Priyanka also helped housewife Safina Around access the tribal benefit scheme. The experience a reminder to Safina that the future is digital.
अभी सब कुछ बन गया है तो हम लोग को भी मोबाइल में देखते हैं फेसबुक यूट्यूब में देखते हैं कि सब लोग आगे बढ़े, तो हम लोग को भी कुछ सीखना चाहिए, आगे बढ़ना चाहिए।
For her service, Priyanka charges a small fee, starting from 10 rupees or 15 cents for emails. Not so much as to deter beneficiaries, but enough to sustain a daily living.
और मेरे पास आते भी है और मेरा पैसा भी कम मतलब आ रहा है, मुझको अर्निंग भी हो रहा है, प्लस मैं कम्युनिटी का मेंबर्स का जो प्रॉब्लम है उसको सॉल्व भी कर रही हूँ। मैं बहुत ही खुश हूँ।
Unusual among most women in Bandapani, Priyanka is well educated, graduating from college. She was a housewife until she joined DEF in 2022 and says her job as a Suchnapreneur has given her not just financial freedom but also self-esteem.
लोग पहले समझते थे एक औरत है क्या ही कर लेगी, क्या ही कर लेगी। अभी जो है वो समझ रहे हैं कि नहीं, ये कर सकती है। डीएफ के द्वारा से मैंने जितना भी ट्रेनिंग वगैरह लिया है उससे मुझे इतना इन्फॉर्म हो गया है कि क्या में क्या चाहिए, किस डॉक्यूमेंट्स में क्या क्या अटैच करना चाहिए और किससे किसको कितना लाभ हो।
Over the past few years, DEF has appointed some 40 Suchnapreneurs in the northern part of West Bengal. It is focusing on tea garden communities with this project because it sees them as particularly vulnerable.
Historically, they have been exploited a lot. They are not aware about their, rights. They are not aware about the labor plantation laws that are applicable to them. So there has been a very systematic exploitation which has, put them into that information darkness zone.
DEF says it is women in India who are particularly disadvantaged when it comes to internet access and says it is addressing this gender divide through its work. It notes, for instance, that it is difficult for many women to even get hold of a smartphone, partly due to cultural factors.
The male do not want to give the control of their lives or of their household to the female. The female, of course, they can't afford it because they are not very livelihood secure. Also, the patriarchal norms in the society, because once you feel that woman has access to internet, social media, she might get aware, she might ask for her rights, so those are the complexities that run in those tea gardens and overall also in our country.
The cities of India may be racing ahead in the digital journey, but there's still a long way to go to make sure that millions of people in communities like this don't get left behind.
A new green revolution is taking root in India and women are at the forefront. Seema Rani is part of the new generation of female farmers in northern India's traditionally patriarchal Haryana state.
कॉटन पिकिंग के लिए जाते हैं तो वहाँ 40-50 के करीब महिलाएं मेरे साथ जाती है सर, और काफ़ी 10-15 साल से जा रही है सर मेरे साथ।
Rani is also a pioneer in the way she farms her land. For the past 8 years, she has collaborated with tech startup Boomitra, using their free app to track nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus as well as soil moisture from her phone. Agricultural knowledge that used to be passed on only to male members of the family who inherited farmlands. Armed with data and tech, Rani has managed to double her income in the past few years.
ऐप के माध्यम से, डॉक्टर के माध्यम से इतनी इन्फॉर्मेशन फार्मर के पास पहले से अच्छी जानकारी है कि वो इन आने वाले समय के हिसाब से पहले से अवेयरनेस है उसके पास सर, तो वो इससे समस्या से निजात पा सकता है आसानी से, जिससे क्या है कि उसकी जितनी भी समस्या आने वाली है वो उसका सामना करता है।
Jaibir, who only goes by his first name, is also a beneficiary of the same technology. After using traditional farming methods for over 30 years, he too signed up for Boomitra's regenerative farming program 3 years ago. Regenerative farming focuses on reducing the use of chemicals and prioritizes greener and more sustainable techniques like composting, crop rotation, and using organic supplements to boost yield.
जो मतलब पौधा है नहीं वो ज़्यादा फूलने लग गया, फूट ज़्यादा करने लग गया, बैल है वो बड़ी आने लग गई थोड़ी।
Another advantage of regenerative farming is that it can capture and store carbon dioxide in the soil, removing it from the atmosphere. And Boomitra says its methods has trapped about 3 tons of carbon in every hectare in Haryana's rice belt. Sequestering or trapping carbon in the soil can nudge the world towards carbon neutrality. And Boomitra has found a way to connect farmers in places like Haryana to the global marketplace for carbon trading, creating a sustainable, virtuous cycle to remove carbon from the atmosphere.
Using soil to trap carbon could be a game changer. Roughly half of India's total landmass, about the size of Mongolia, is used for cultivation. It's been an untapped resource so far that can potentially benefit the whole world.
Boomitra uses satellite imagery to map carbon levels in the soil and combines that using artificial intelligence with an existing archive of over 1 million soil samples from around the globe. Its technology creates a detailed picture of soil properties and the health of the crops and can even suggest measures to improve yield and carbon trapping. If they find soil carbon increasing every year, it means their techniques are working. For each ton of carbon trapped in the soil, Boomitra claims 1 carbon credit. It then sells each credit for $10 to $20 to corporations that use them to offset their own emissions. Some experts say carbon trading makes it easy for companies to get away with polluting, but others disagree, arguing that paying for offsets can help companies improve their systems to reduce emissions down the line.
And if they're using offsets as a way to bridge that gap until their product portfolio or the service portfolio has evolved, I do not actually see an issue with offsets, again provided if they are measured and reported correctly. The main gap has been poor measurement and reporting.
About 75% of the proceeds from carbon credit sales, Boomitra says, is channeled back to farmers like Seema Rani, adding to their income and encouraging them to persist with regenerative practices.
Our buyer is able to see exactly which farmer the money has been paid for, what it has been paid for, what kind of practices has he done, what kind of sequestration has he done. So we are able to provide this entire transparency across the system. How we are able to do that? With remote sensing, we know exactly which farm it is. We have the entire boundary of the farm and we are able to monitor on that farm what really has happened.
Boomitra and its partners also pay close attention to harvest season to ensure sustainable practices are being followed across the farming cycle. Much of their work in India is in the country's north, where farmers often burn crop residue after the harvest. In Haryana state, they teach farmers alternative ways of disposing the stubble. This not only avoids adding to carbon emissions, but allowing the residual root to naturally decompose, also sequesters or traps more carbon in the soil.
These are bales of hay made from crop stubble that would have been either burnt or thrown away. But once it's neatly cut and stacked, these can now be sold to private companies that can use them to make mats, cardboard or furniture.
The practice has sparked a whole new industry in Haryana, with companies buying these bales in bulk to make biogas.
तो वहाँ पे तो उनकी वैल्यू जीरो थी. अब अगर वो अपने खेत के माध्यम से, एक तो उनको 1000 रुपए की सब्सिडी किसान से, सरकार से मिल पाती है उनको, जो भी एंटरप्रेन्योर होता है उनको ये सेल कर देता है जो भी बेल्स होती है.
But experts say carbon trapping has its limitations and can only work if the carbon remains in the ground.
So you can use soil to capture a lot of soil carbon dioxide in the next 20-30 years, but once the saturation level hits, then it may not be a continued way in which we can capture more carbon. But of course, you would still like to keep that carbon that you have captured over the next, whatever, 2-3 decades to still remain in the soil, because if that comes out, then you will have that much additional carbon in the atmosphere.
It's still early days to say how much area is needed for soil carbon sequestration to make a tangible dent in climate change. Boomitra believes if regenerative farming is practiced in at least 5 to 10 million acres across the globe for the next 3 to 4 decades, results will follow. But for women farmers like Seema Rani across northern India, change is already here. Their innovative farmlands are helping them become financially independent while also playing a role in tackling an urgent global crisis.
My name is Luima Edward Galiwango. I'm the project manager of the project called Community Development and Livelihood Project.
In the middle of one of Kampala's biggest slums, a model farm. The project launched in February to give hundreds of jobless young people in Kamocha slum the chance of a brighter future. Funded by local NGOs, the scheme teaches youth the skills to launch vertical farms in crowded settlements in the capital and to build their own startups. A potential lifeline in a place where typical incomes are less than $1 a day.
They looked at Kamocha, which is a slum area. It faces so many challenges, ranging from unemployment, malnutrition, poverty, poor waste management and disposal. So the Kamocha Christian Caring Community, they looked at this as a holistic approach to solving such challenges.
And the challenges are daunting. Uganda has one of the youngest populations in the world. Nearly 4 in 5 citizens are under the age of 30, but jobs for them are far too few, with 83% of young people unemployed. One consequence of this is a drug abuse rate that's by far the highest in East Africa, as well as a persistent problem with alcohol and high-risk sexual activity. Edward Luima hopes to draw more people into farming by pitching it as an attractive business opportunity.
The skills that we avail to our people, number one, we start with mindset change. And to shift the paradigm thinking of our people, that agriculture is mainly for the failures, it is mainly for people in rural areas. As urbanization continues to grow in Uganda, people have limited spaces. So we want to teach them how they can utilize their small spaces and get maximum output.
Young people, including school children, come to learn how to set up small gardens in their backyards. They grow vegetables like lettuce, spinach, onions and tomatoes in containers, polythene bags or wall hangings to create vertical gardens.
If you mix your soil well, the soils will be fertile, the plants will grow well.
Access to safe and clean water is a challenge in slum settlements, and Edward's solution is to harvest rainwater for his crops. This community project is now a model farm to young people living in the slum. The aim is that the skills they acquire here is replicated at home to help grow more food for their families and also earn additional income.
We are also delighted to have a young boy who wants to join urban farming. He has come for seedlings. He's called Isaiah.
Perhaps somewhat unusually for a teenager from this neighborhood, 15-year-old Isaiah Wamala dreams of being a farmer and even studies it at school.
Agriculture. It is one of my passions. For example, at my own home, I rear rabbits, I keep chicken, and I grow some vegetables. So when I saw this project within Kamocha, I was so astonished that I had to take part.
By the time the 1-month-long program is over, Isaiah, like the hundreds of young trainees before him, will know what type of soil is best for crops and which varieties adapt well in bad weather.
This variety of tomatoes is called Nadia F1. It's a good variety of tomatoes whereby it is easily adaptable to any climatic or environmental changes that may occur, and it's currently a profitable tomato. Each standing crop of this tomato can give you up to 30 tomatoes within its life cycle.
As part of the program, Isaiah will take home free seedlings to start his own urban farm. He says he wants to change the mindset of young people living in the slum.
I would like to inspire other youths within Kamocha because I happen to see fellow youths. Some of them are engaging in drug abuse, others are just sitting at home.
So once a young person is interested and has a space, we go into the community and help them to establish these small gardens, mainly the raised bed gardens and also the container and the polythene bag gardens.
Out in Isaiah's garden, his entrepreneurial dreams are taking shape. Within 4 months, if all goes well, he will have enough crops growing for harvest. Some to eat at home, the rest to sell to neighbors or at the local markets. But until he gets his first harvest, Isaiah won't be going it alone. As part of the project, Edward makes regular house checks to all his first-time farmers. He troubleshoots their problems and also sprays their plants with pesticides for free, helping them keep costs at a minimum while they learn the craft of caring for their crops in the initial months. For Jacqueline Chankunziri, a tailor and a mother of 3, farming means she can at last regularly put food on the table. Before, life was tough. She wasn't earning enough from her business. Providing nutritious meals for her children was a challenge. These days, she even has extra spinach to sell at her shop.
Kinyambye nnyo kusanga nze ndya fresh gye ndimye mu ndimiro gyange. Basigenze kubuuza bali abazitunda oba fresh oba ki. Wano mba kushuwa nga amanyi kyendidde fresh.
The Kamocha Community Urban Farm is now the nearest fresh vegetable market for low-income earners. Edward has big ambitions for his project. He hopes to set up at least 4 other farms in Kampala slums.
We want to see that we get more partners to scale this project in various slum areas facing similar challenges like Kamocha. So we want to come up with more skilling centers.
Armed with great resourcefulness and a good sprinkling of hope, Edward Luyima is tackling some of Uganda's thorniest problems, one seedling at a time.